Welcome to GRE. I'm your host Keith Weinhold, talking about vital due diligence questions that you have to know the answers to before you buy your next property. Even advanced investors don't know to ask some of these. Then a terrific guest tells us how she is practically applying AI to increase rental occupancy, save on maintenance expenses, and drive rental income. Today on Get Rich Education.
Since 2014, the powerful Get Rich Education podcast has created more passive income for people than nearly any other show in the world. This show teaches you how to earn strong returns from passive real estate investing in the best markets without losing your time being a flipper or landlord. Show host Keith Weinhold writes for both Forbes and Rich Dad Advisors and delivers a new show every week. Since 2014, there's been millions of listener downloads in 188 world nations. He has A-list show guests include top-selling personal finance author Robert Kiyosaki. Get Rich Education can be heard on every podcast platform, plus it has its own dedicated Apple and Android listener phone apps. Build wealth on the go with the Get Rich Education podcast. Sign up now for the Get Rich Education podcast or visit GetRichEducation.com.
You know Mid-South Homebuyers, that top Memphis turnkey provider. I learned that a secret weapon behind their explosive growth is more than just you buying their properties. It's an executive coach. For 9 years now, their CEO Terry Kerr and his COO Pat Nix have worked privately with a coach who I've now learned from too, and he doesn't market himself online anywhere. After 12 years behind the scenes, that coach is now making himself available exclusively for GRE listeners. His name is Daniel Thomas Hind. If you're a hard-charging business owner or investor who wants to get in the best shape of your life, physically, mentally, and professionally, you can fill out an application for a free consult. This is private one-on-one coaching for those willing to go to uncommon lengths to achieve uncommon results. Thanks to Daniel, we've all become better leaders, better operators, and better men. It started by showing up for ourselves. Now it's your turn. Go to DanielThomasHind.com, H-I-N-D, that's DanielThomasHind.com, and sign up before spots fill. Flock Homes helps multifamily owners exit the operator grind, whether it's your sixplex or a 50-unit apartment, through a 721 exchange. This defers your capital gains tax. It's a strategy long used by institutions. Now you can swap tenants and toilets for passive income and zero management. Request your initial valuation. See if your property qualifies at flockhomes.com/GRE. That's FLOCKhomes.com/GRE.
You're listening to the show that has created more financial freedom than nearly any show in the world. This is Get Rich Education.
Welcome to GRE. I'm your host, Keith Weinhold. The world's biggest problems are also the world's biggest businesses. That's not a coincidence, and it squarely includes the problem of having enough quality housing. We talk about how to do that profitably and diligently. And on the topic of diligence, I've got a dirty dozen due diligence questions. Call it 4D, I suppose. These are smart questions to ask before you get under contract to buy your next property, and some of these could just as well apply to your existing rental property. Build-to-rent properties have become so popular, but ask the question, are these build-to-rent properties becoming overbuilt in this neighborhood? That's the first due diligence question, and a lot of investors overlook this, so you got to be mindful that build-to-rent often means lots of new construction in one smaller defined area. What you should do is ensure that new supply is being absorbed by renters. Some red flags to look out for are if multiple nearby communities are offering heavy concessions or free rent enticements. That is a sign that they're having difficulty luring in new renters to the area. And now, taking a couple months to rent a brand new build isn't that unusual, but does the whole thing kind of feel like a mattress liquidation sale? Renters shouldn't have more signing bonuses than NFL free agents. The next due diligence question, does this market still have population and job growth, or am I late to the party? New workplace construction is a bullish market sign. Workplace construction, I'm talking about like a new office building, especially a new medical clinic, a new data center, a new factory. These signs are super bullish for an area because not only does that attract the jobs and support the housing, as you can imagine, but see, that also means that whomever built the new workplace, well, they probably did some research and they're bullish about that area for a reason. They're going to look into that and do their due diligence that you can leverage before they spend perhaps tens of millions of dollars or more in building a new workplace. The population should be stable or rising. Red flags are if growth already peaked and layoffs are increasing. Don't arrive late to the party after the DJ has already packed up. The next question when you're looking into a property is this unit likely to cash flow on day one? You need to wonder, is the unit occupied or vacant? Some investors don't even think to ask that question until they get down the road a ways. When it's occupied, does the rent meet or exceed expenses with a buffer for maintenance and vacancy? Now, if it's negatively cash flowing and you're solely enjoying the other four ways real estate pays, that might be okay, but you need to be comfortable with adopting a monthly bill. That may or may not work. And do you know what I call a negatively cash flowing property? I call it a 401k property because you have to keep feeding it every month like it's a 401k. A negatively cash flowing property effectively reduces your salary like a 401k does, and anyone that is serious about building real wealth when they're young enough to enjoy it would not invest in a 401k outside of the employer match portion. I'm your host, Keith Weinhold, here on Get Rich Education, episode 610. I've answered 3 out of 12 dirty dozen due diligence questions, and with abundantly minded, grow your means answers that you're just not going to find on ChatGPT. Before I get to the fourth one, do you know what the word diligence means? Anyway, you probably have some idea. The definition of diligence is the quality of working carefully and persistently, demonstrating steady effort and thorough attention to a task. It implies a strong work ethic, meticulousness, and a commitment to completing duties well. All right, that is the definition. Diligence is the opposite of negligence. The next one, does my new build property need an inspection first? And this is a question actually that came in from Jake in Manhattan. Yes, it always does. Whether it's resale or new build, it is always a good idea to get an inspection. One of the biggest misconceptions really is that new build means problem-free. People just equate new build with problem-free. No, that is not the case. New build can have problems. There could still be foundation cracks that are beyond normal settling, perhaps improperly installed roof flashing that could cause leaks, maybe windows or doors that are installed out of square, and a bunch more stuff that could be wrong even in new build. A pre-sale inspection after you get the property under contract, that only costs $350 to $650 for single-family rentals and $500 to $900 for a duplex. This is cheap insurance. It's also good peace of mind. Get it done. Sometimes investors want to skip the inspection when they need a quick close. Buyer beware of the risk. The fifth due diligence question, what happens to my numbers if rents flatten for 2 years? And this is a more germane question than usual today because rent growth is slow here in this cycle. Single-family rents are up just 1.3% year over year per totality, and expenses tend to rise with inflation. All right, so if your rents flatten for 2 years, project that ahead like your other expenses are rising and see that the property would still remain financially stable. We cannot build a business plan on motivational quotes. Next, am I buying near major employers or near hopes and dreams? With work from home trends, which can probably better be called work from anywhere trends, buying near major employers is actually less important today, but it still matters. It is good to have diversified employers and stable payrolls somewhat nearby. Promises about future development might never happen. Sheesh, some areas have been up and coming since cassette tapes. The seventh due diligence question, what's the property tax trajectory here? That's the question. Taxes are often stable and increases predictable, but is there a local budget shortfall? And see, this is the type of due diligence that few people do. Keep in mind, and I'm bringing up new build a lot because there are so many new build income properties today. On new builds, also look out. Year one taxes can look deceptively low until improved property is assessed in year two. And any reputable provider, and when you contact our GRE investment coaching here, we're going to point that out to you. This is how you can, though, sometimes get unusually low property taxes in year one if they have not assessed the improvement yet. Question 8, and this comes from Violet in Peoria, Arizona. Is the builder offering real incentives, or are they just hiding the true price? Okay, well, incentives, they should genuinely improve your deal without inflating the pricing here. Look out for sunglasses and a fake mustache. For financing, it's mandatory that you have an appraisal. This protects you against overpaying. In an appraisal, even though it's done for bank collateral purposes, checking the quality of their collateral, which is the property, it is also a good independent third-party valuation check. This is a good tool to keep you from overpaying. Back around the 2008 days, the global financial crisis, often then the lender and the appraiser could collude to give you favorable appraisals, somewhat inflated values. And as it turned out, I was an investor then and ended up being the beneficiary of some of those favorable appraisals. But since then, the CFPB, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, stepped in. They were formed to step in so that those parties are no longer in cahoots with each other. And yes, incentives are explicitly disclosed to the lender and appraiser. For example, if you have a seller that offers to pay half of your closing costs, if you pay their full sale price, okay, the appraisers do know that. They have that information before they provide you with the appraised value. Ninth, what's the vacancy rate in this area right now? This is a good due diligence question to ask. A balanced market has about 5 to 6% vacancy, 8 to 10% or more. That can often be the sign of a weak market, but this might be all right in build-to-rent communities, and that's due to longer initial lease-up periods that you have there. Due diligence question 10. Would I still want this property if appreciation slowed dramatically? You want to ask yourself this question because you cannot predict appreciation. The answer to this question is most likely yes. You would still want the property even if appreciation slowed dramatically, because as a listener here, you understand that with a 20% down payment, just 2% price appreciation creates a 10% return on your equity, and you're also benefiting from the other 4 ways real estate pays. But if you're absolutely counting on appreciation to do all of the heavy lifting over the long term, that's less investing, and that is more hoping with spreadsheets. What's more predictable is something like inflation profiting on your loan, which is a force on its own. Next, ask this question. How old are the big ticket items like the roof, HVAC, plumbing, sewer, and electrical? I mean, if you've got a number of expensive items that are near the end of their life, you could soon become emotionally attached to ibuprofen. At GRE Marketplace, we work with either extensively renovated properties or new build properties, so this is rarely a concern, these big CapEx items, capital expenditures. And that is really the way to go, extensively renovated or new build property, because see, that way, the cost of having all this done for you before you buy the property, that means that what you're essentially doing is financing the cost of all of this into the loan. You're financing into the new roof, HVAC, plumbing, sewer, electrical, if any of that applies. And if you're buying a fixer-upper, well, then a lot of times you need to pay cash for these items and you lose repair time where the property could have been rented during that renovation time. Work with our investment coaching here and you're going to be all set. Those big ticket items are rarely a concern. And then what happens is if you have a break-even or a positively cash flowing property, the tenant covers all of your operating expenses with the rent payment, and you never have to pay any money at all for these big ticket items. They pay for your mortgage and everything else, and you never lose the time because these things were done before you bought. And the last one, question 12, what you want to ask is, what's the exit strategy if I ever want to sell? That's the last question. Begin with the end in mind. The fewer doors the property has, the easier it is to sell. Single-family homes win big here. I mean, your eventual buyer down the road, they could be a gleeful owner-occupant even if the rental math were poor. That buyer wouldn't even know that the rental math is poor because they're not renting it out. They're going to live there themselves. Sometimes your single-family rental tenant even becomes your eventual buyer. This can work with duplexes too. Sometimes you can get an owner-occupant or your tenant stays there and continues to reside there as they're the owner and they rent out the other side as well. But if you're trying to sell a 32-plex, well, now you're exposed to cap rates and investor sentiment and market cycles. It's sort of like trying to offload a small corporation. That doesn't mean that apartments are bad, but they are substantially less liquid than single-family rentals. That's your exit strategy that we're looking at. They are the dirty dozen due diligence questions. Every investor feels bumps. I have, you will too, but these questions and answers are really going to go a long way toward helping you own right. And when you stick with it, real estate is a forgiving and lucrative asset class because you're paid in so many ways. Hey, coming up shortly, a guest that you haven't heard from in a while, and I know that some of you have missed hearing her voice. We'll talk a bit about the state of the real estate market here in a period where prices are remarkably stable. Housing transactions are only about 80% of what they usually are, and then we'll discuss how she's using AI in her real estate investing today. It's how she's increasing her occupancy and optimizing the amount of rent being collected. She splits her time in a couple ways between real estate markets in both Michigan and Georgia, and then in both the short-term and long-term rental markets. That's next. I'm Keith Weinhold. You're listening to Get Rich Education. What if you got your mortgage loans the same place I get mine? You sure can at Ridge Lending Group, NMLS 42056. They provided GRE listeners with more loans than anyone because Ridge specializes in investment property. They'll help you build a long-term plan for growing your real estate empire with leverage. Start your pre-qual and even chat directly with President Chaley Ridge. While it's on your mind, start at ridgelendinggroup.com. That's ridgelendinggroup.com. Let me ask you something. If you've worked hard to build wealth, is your money positioned to actually support your goals? A lot of accredited investors leave capital sitting in cash because it feels safe, but inflation and missed income opportunities can quietly erode its value. Freedom Family Investments offers Freedom Notes for investors seeking structured income backed by real estate. It's a straightforward approach built on real assets, not speculation. And full disclosure, I'm an investor myself. What I like is that their team walks you through how it all works so you can decide if it aligns with your portfolio and income goals. Every investment carries risk and nothing is guaranteed, but with a track record of consistent on-time investor payouts, they built real credibility. Go to freedomfamilyinvestments.com to book a clarity call or text FAMILY to 66866. That's FAMILY to 66866.
Hi, this is Russell Gray, co-host of the Real Estate Guys radio show, and you're listening to Get Rich Education with Keith Weinhold. Don't quit your daydream.
We've got a special treat for you today, as for the first time in a few years, we hear from someone that served since 2020 in-house here in both operations and as an investment coach. Today, she serves GRE in a different capacity internally, but a lot of you still ask about her. That's why she's here. She's got both the formal education with her MBA and is about as robust in being a real estate investor as you can be at the same time. Oh, it's a warm welcome back to the talented Aundrea Newbern.
Hey, Keith, it's so great to be back. It's been a long time.
Well, you've continued to grow, not just in your business, but in your family size since you were last here. Congrats there. I'd like your thoughts just generally about the American residential real estate investment market today, where we've got these sort of rising prices in low supply areas. We have slightly falling prices in oversupplied areas. We've got mortgage rates that have normalized. We've got tough affordability for renters that want to be first-time homebuyers. So just tell us about what you see big picture, Aundrea.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I invest and operate predominantly in the Southeast. So this will probably be a little bit more of a lens from the Southeast market. But as you know, I still actively invest in real estate myself. I help, people buy rental properties also. But then the main thing that I'm doing now is I have a property management company down in Southeast Georgia. And so I'm seeing things more from the lens of what investors are doing, where they're investing, where rents are going, and if people are even buying properties. So it's been a little bit interesting. I mean, what I'm seeing is that, as you all know, it's slowed down. We're not seeing as many investors buy properties, but people still are doing it, and they're still finding good cash flowing properties. Where the challenges come in is you're not making as much money on these properties as you did 4 or 5 years ago. So, your margins are going to be a little bit less, your cash flow is going to be a little bit less. And then we're seeing, rents kind of stabilize depending on the type of asset class that it is. So, things are not doing wonderfully, but they're stable from what I'm seeing in the Southeast market.
And now you do a good bit of investing in sort of Brunswick and out toward the Georgia coast, including places like Jekyll Island, where G. Edward Griffin wrote his book about the formation of the Fed and all that. In general, how has that area been from a residential supply standpoint? For example, we know in neighboring Florida, they've had a lot of oversupplied pockets. How are we looking there? I think you have a lot of occupancy right now from talking to you earlier.
We do. So I manage 2 different types of investments, right? I manage the long-term rental properties. There's less of those like on Jekyll Island. There's more of those in the mainland and Brunswick. And then we do the vacation rentals, which is very, very heavy on Jekyll Island and St. Simon's Island. What we're seeing this year, if we talk about maybe those vacation rentals first, and then I'll talk about the long-term.
Yeah.
The vacation rentals, we're still seeing a lot of demand. A lot of people are still coming. We're not really down from this time last year. But the one big thing we're seeing is people are booking their vacations last minute. They're not booking them months in advance at this point. So that's definitely had a little bit of an impact and had us on edge because we're like, okay, where are these vacationers? And then sure enough, they're booking a couple weeks out now. So that's going really well. The investors that have purchased homes on Jekyll and St. Simon's, especially Jekyll, are doing really good. They're still making a lot of money. They have high occupancy. Where we've seen a little bit more of the challenge is with the long-term rentals. So rents are kind of staying flat from where they were last year. In some of those B and C markets, we may even see a slight decrease, just a couple percentage points. And then it's taking longer to fill the property. So last year, we could typically get a qualified renter in 3 to 4 weeks. Now we're seeing anywhere from 5 to 8 weeks right now.
As far as on the short-term side, have restrictions affected you at all, like banning Airbnbs, for example? And how have you seen that play out in other areas? Because you certainly network with other people that do short-term rentals. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I can talk about the Southeast market for one, where in Jekyll, St. Simon's, Brunswick, we're seeing no rental restrictions whatsoever. We do have to have a process to register the rental with the county, but it's so easy. It's literally a form. We do an inspection once a year, and that is it. I don't know that this is a fact, but a lot of the commissioners and politicians in the area also have rental properties. I think that probably has a little bit of an impact on that. Up here in Michigan, which, I have another home and I live in Michigan part of the time as well, there's a lot of restrictions. In fact, my house right now is in Sterling Heights, Michigan, and they already have a rental ban where you can't do less than 30 days. So you're already having to go into that midterm market. And now they have some proposals up with the local municipality to even eliminate some of that. So we're seeing that in this area.
Generally, do you tend to see it in nicer, ritzier areas where they want to make the short-term rental restrictions?
Yes, I do. Absolutely. Up here in Sterling Heights, where I live, the average home in my neighborhood is around $500,000 to $600,000, and they absolutely do not want those here. But if you go a few neighborhoods over, where you're looking more of like the $200,000 to $300,000 range, they don't seem to have as much of an issue with those there.
We've been talking about short-term rentals in both Southeast Georgia and then in Metro Detroit, where you currently spend quite a bit of your time. Talk to us about the long-term rental market. With affordability for buying being down, that really hurts the prospective first-time home buyer, so they need to be more likely to rent, which would make some people wonder, oh, well, then how could vacancy possibly go up in an area? Well, migration, we've touched on it, is one reason why that might happen. Another reason why it might happen is you might see more doubling up.
Yeah, we do. We see a lot more families coming in. In fact, last week we just rented a property out to somebody where the parents were renting with their children, their grown adult children that also had kids. They're getting bigger houses, right? So they're actually feeling that need to fill up some of our larger homes, but it's multi-generational now. We are seeing a lot more roommates come in too. Instead of 2 roommates, you'll see 3 people come in and get a house together. The other thing we've noticed that's been really drastic, maybe the last 3 or 4 months, is the debt load that we're seeing. So when we run people's background checks and look, they've got a lot of credit card debt now. We didn't see that as much years prior.
All right, so you're seeing that at the street level. That's a statistic that we can read about, that American savings rates are down and the proportion of debt is off and up. You're seeing it in real time there. Do you see potentially, Aundrea, this propensity for people to want to sort of bend things and have someone that's not on the lease live there with them in order to cut costs? So, is there really anything in this environment that we really need to be careful about when we're screening tenants with them having such a debt load and having to struggle with inflation and rising prices?
Yeah, absolutely. The debt load, number one, we'll see them increasing, and that's something we want to keep an eye on. So we're having to kind of retool our policies to look more critically at that debt load. They may not be delinquent on anything now, but if we've seen it gone up significantly in the last few months, I bet you it's coming. So we're trying to retool our policies to be able to deal with that. You mentioned people having unauthorized tenants in the home. That has persistently been an issue for us maybe the past year. We find this often that's happening. And usually it's because that person wouldn't qualify on the application, but they still bring in money and can help with a rent. The third thing, and this is with the advent of AI, right? How big AI has come, is we're seeing a lot of documents that are clearly fraudulent, but they look really, really good because AI has created them. So that's another issue.
Gosh, that's interesting. Well, I want to ask you more about AI. And Aundrea, America is in such a weird time with AI today. You probably saw it at these college graduations across the nation, where a luminary is up front at the lectern making a commencement speech, and they get booed by students for talking about embracing AI. And that's probably because the student feels threatened about AI taking the job that they might not get. And what's funny? I suspect that some of those same students, they loved it when AI helped them write an essay in order to get to graduation and wear that cap and gown. So
absolutely.
That's what I mean when I say that we're in a weird time with AI. But I know that you've really embraced AI as a property manager and investor almost from the get-go to make your property operations more efficient so that you don't have to raise prices on owners and you can keep those owner expenses down and increase resident retention at the same time. So tell us more about how you're using it.
Yeah. So my team, I think, hates me for this right now, but in the last 6 months, we have literally changed our operations front to back in a few different ways. Number one, we've changed the systems that we use. So, for vacation rentals as well as long-term rentals, you have your property management system that kind of streamlines everything and that you do everything in. We've started going to platforms that are a little bit more AI friendly. So they have AI agents built in and they have AI functionality already in them. so that we're not having to purchase additional tools to come in and add them as a layer on top of our systems. So that's kind of the basic thing that we're doing. But the other fun things that I've been able to do, and I'm still, working on this and we're refining it daily, is using AI actually as kind of like a virtual assistant, essentially. So we do have virtual assistants with a company, and they're great and we love them and they do a wonderful job. However, they're humans, so they're not perfect. But these AI agents, once you've trained them to do a lot of the back office tasks that your virtual assistants can do, after a certain number of iterations and training, they don't really make mistakes. So knowing that we have that and we can continue building on that, we don't have to add FTE to our team, which increase our labor costs. That's allowing us to not raise our prices on our clients, and which I'm sure they're all happy about because other property management companies are doing that right now.
Right. So property management companies are going to have to do this to stay competitive and keep up, whether they want to or not. And when I think about using AI in real estate, one of the first things I think of, just say that tenant journey from attracting the tenant to placing them. When I think of the cutting edge, I think of help with marketing and writing advertisements, which I think is kind of a simple thing to do, sort of an easy way to implement AI. And also when I think about that early part of the journey, really, I think about using AI as a leasing assistant and sort of how you see that more, the 24/7 front desk, if you will. I mean, if you have an AI leasing assistant that can answer questions for your prospective new tenant and follow up with leads, that can be a big deal. I mean, a lead that sits unanswered for 6 hours, they just kind of turn into a cold French fry. And instead, AI can answer those questions and schedule that tour. If a prospective tenant asks the same question 4 times, the AI doesn't get frustrated and leave out some sigh. So can you tell us more about kind of that front end, the marketing, and then the leasing end? Are you using AI as a leasing assistant essentially?
We are. So if we talk about maybe the marketing piece of things before we get into the leasing, we're not using as much AI with marketing at the moment. I have had it write some copy for me for some marketing, and I'm not usually crazy about it. I still think it looks like AI right now. So we're having to do a lot of changes with that. But what it has done a really good job at helping us out in the last few weeks is have it go analyze your website, have it analyze how you come up in search functions, right? So if somebody's going to Google or if they're going to Gemini or they're going to ChatGPT, what's happening with your website and your company when people are looking for property managers, for example. It does a very thorough check on that. It's also really good at reviewing your website and telling you where you have gaps in terms of maybe you need to, change something here or there, or you have certain links that are not helping in your search functionality. So I think it's really good as far as analyzing stuff. That's kind of about all we've done as far as marketing. As far as a leasing assistant goes, this has essentially been like the biggest lift I think we've had from AI, period, in the last couple of years. So maybe a year ago, we implemented a software, and I'm going to leave the name out because I'm sure, I'd rather not do that, but it's a software and there's a bunch of different options that you can use for this, but essentially it collects all of our leads for us. So we set it up, we set criteria for the type of tenant and our policies for, what type of tenant would qualify. And they call in or message or email this number or this email address. And the AI essentially goes through and asks them a series of questions, lets them know if they would potentially qualify or not. If they would not, then it will not allow them to schedule showings for any of our properties. If they would, with no exceptions, then we can go ahead and get them scheduled. And the AI actually goes through and gets them scheduled as well. So it is a huge help for us.
That is really nice. Okay. Helping out with tenant screening there. Can it arrange tours, put them on the calendar then if they're qualified?
Yes, it actually gives them an option and shows them all of the dates we have available so the person can go ahead and schedule their showing. It can provide updates if we need it. So if we change our policy, it can send that out to the tenants for us as well. So that process, I would say, is about 90% automated right now. It doesn't really take much human intervention except for us to review things and make sure there's nothing kind of wonky with the schedule or anything like that.
Okay, so if they're qualified and interested, the prospective tenant can fill out an application, and then is AI assisting on the screening? And are you still meeting with them in person before they get the keys and sign the contract?
Yes and no. So we still do meet with them in person to be able to do like that walkthrough of the property and make sure we're documenting issues and all of that, which, by the way, I think in the next year, that'll probably be automated as well. But we're not quite there yet. They do not have to come in person in terms of signing the lease or anything like that. That's all done remotely. If they want to, they can, but we really don't have to meet with them until it's time for move-in at this point.
All right, we're seeing the evolution of AI since it was really ChatGPT that was pioneering and rolling out in November of 2022. So we're coming up on 4 years of really this activity being integrated into our lives. And I think we both know that it's only going to get better from here. So when we have a tenant that's actually placed, of course, I often like to say they call it disciplined property management, but it could probably very well be called tenant management. And I think about, is everything okay after the tenant's there? As far as AI having a maintenance triage function, if there's a maintenance request, of course, you're going to want to prioritize something differently if it's a big plumbing leak that's damaging the subfloor versus just having a slow drain. You probably want to be sure either one of those things are taken care of, but one is going to get priority over the other. So can you tell us more about after that tenant's place, the maintenance triage and using AI there?
Yeah, so we've pretty much automated the maintenance process in the last year, other than, actually making sure the vendor went out and did what they were supposed to do. So right now with us, a tenant has to go in, unless they have a disability and can't do it, of course, but they have to go in and put in any work orders through our system. And essentially what happens is we've created kind of a workflow. So here's the issues of the types of things that would not be considered an emergency unless they answer, certain questions a certain way. Here are the things that are emergencies and require us to go out pretty much no matter what, right? For the things that are non-emergency or they're not clear in what the actual issue is, which is probably the number one problem we have, is they say, my lights aren't working. That's it. We don't know anything else about it. And then come to find out it was just a light bulb, or come to find out it was just their breakers tripping. The AI actually goes in and analyzes what they put in as the issue and selected, and then it asks them a series of questions. And then based on their responses, it actually tells them what to go do to troubleshoot it. We're seeing right now with data, it's eliminating maybe about 40% of the things that we would send somebody out for.
That's huge.
Yeah, it is huge. And the tenants are doing it and they're not really pushing back or having issues with it most of the time. But then there are certain things that AI can't quite figure out. And we're still training it on. So we do have to send somebody out or call. But it's having a huge reduction in us having to send folks out for this.
Okay, yeah, we're not talking about completely eliminating humans, but that's huge if they can have AI give them the answer to maybe some routine maintenance thing, probably that they could have gone and found out on their own. But yeah, that saves 40% of maintenance visits. That's a big deal. All right, so not too much backlash from tenants, not saying like, oh, hey, I don't want to be talking with your robot. Come on, not so much of that.
No, not yet. Now, we are looking right now at implementing an actual AI agent that would answer the phone to handle these types of just maintenance issues, nothing else but maintenance for right now. And we've tested out a lot of different softwares that do this. Some are better than others, but none of them are perfect yet. And I could call and definitely tell I'm talking to AI. Maybe some people couldn't. I feel we're probably going to have a little bit more blowback when that starts getting implemented and rolled out.
Yeah, I imagine people are just going to get more and more used to this. I wonder how much AI is helping you with rent pricing, what amount to set the rent for. I mean, for example, isn't it interesting if AI knows that, hey, a bunch of units in the neighborhood all around you, they already have high occupancy. It's really tight in this submarket where maybe it would advise you to bump up your rent. So tell us about how AI is helping you with rent pricing.
Yeah. So, as a broker, I obviously have access to the MLS, which we use for a lot of data, but then sometimes there's rentals that are not on the MLS. So, an owner went and listed it themselves. And I actually have an agent that their task is to go in every couple of days and they'll analyze any of our existing listed properties that we have that are not occupied. We're still waiting on somebody to apply. And it'll go and tell me, hey, has anything else been listed? Has anything that was out there when we did our review 2 days ago, has anything closed? Can we figure out, what price it rented for? Sometimes it can, sometimes it can't, but it'll provide me a report every 2 days, automated in my inbox for me to be able to look at on that. So it's really nice.
Wow, this could be hugely useful. Yeah. Or imagine on the flip side of that, if AI detects that there are a lot of vacancies in your area that, hey, you probably don't want to get so aggressive with rent increases. In that case, was there any last way that you're using AI in real estate? Maybe something I didn't think about asking you, Aundrea?
If we talk about long-term rentals, not as much. I think you kind of hit on the main things that we're using it for right now. But if we look at vacation rentals, it is doing a lot more there, I think, at the moment than it is long-term. So, for example, pricing. We have dynamic pricing that we use for all of our vacation rentals, and the dynamic pricing isn't perfect. So somebody still has to physically go in and make sure no tweaks need to be made, that there's nothing weird going on in the software. I now have an AI agent that is their number one job. They go in once a day. They review all of our pricing. They let me know whether we need to adjust it up, down, change our minimum days, maximum days, and we make the adjustments. We're training it now to actually do those for us, but we haven't let it do it yet. So we're still waiting there. It's still waiting on its approval for me to do that. But things such as pricing, things such as going through and analyzing guest feedback or guest tone, even in messages, it's providing me reports on that daily so I can help identify problems that are maybe small problems before they become big.
It makes sense that it would be more applicable in short-term rentals with all the turnover that you have there. Well, Aundrea, let us know if there's a way for our followers to keep up with you and what you're doing, because people still ask about you here. You're so well liked. Let us know.
Yeah, so there's a couple of ways. If you're wanting to kind of see what we're doing with property management or our company, you can go to goldenisletretreats.com. There's also a way for you to get in touch with me there. You can also check me out on LinkedIn or on Facebook, so I'm there as well, and I'd be happy to connect with anybody. I miss our listeners.
Oh, Aundrea, it's been valuable. It's been great having you back.
Thank you, Keith.
Yeah, great to hear from Aundrea again on the show. It has been a few years. If you use professional management like I do, they will most likely be applying AI in a lot of the ways that we discussed. Coming up on the show soon, a life coach that's had a profound effect on a number of guests that we've hosted here on the show over the years. He has agreed to join us. He doesn't do a lot of appearances like this, so it'll be great. We'll hear directly from Daniel Thomas Hind and how he transforms the lives of so many business people and investors professionally, physically, and mentally. I'm confident that it's going to help you get more out of life too. Until next week, I'm your host, Keith Weinhold. Don't quit your daydream.
Nothing on this show should be considered specific, personal, or professional advice. Please consult an appropriate tax, legal, real estate, financial, or business professional for individualized advice. Opinions of guests are their own. Information is not guaranteed. All investment strategies have the potential for profit or loss. The host is operating on behalf of Get Rich Education, LLC exclusively.
The preceding program was brought to you by your home for wealth building, GetRichEducation.com.